Let the migration begin. This is a bin of mixed worms. It is European night crawlers, red wigglers, two types of red wigglers in fact, and it is nearly done. You can see there's a little bit of paper, or I should say cardboard, but other than that, and this very well liked mango pit, there's nothing in here. So we're going to feed after we just take a peek at some of the worms and some of the castings. I hope the color's coming through, and I hope it's coming through true. If it is, you'll see very black castings and lots of cocoons and some really nice, pretty color worms, very dark. This bin did not have any manure. This was a standard bedding only, shredded cardboard and newspaper and typical bedding stuff. And it will be 6 weeks old tomorrow. So it is right on target for what my bins typically finish at. If you look here, you'll see I see a cocoon on the right, a cocoon on the left, a cocoon, 3 cocoons, and a little piece of material resting on my thumb. So it's really doing well in the breeding area. There's a lot of worms in here, and there's a lot of cocoons in here. So what I'm going to do is give them some food to migrate them. Oops, I just dumped some over the edge. To migrate them to one end. Just let me shake this off here, just give you a view of a couple of the worms. This is what they're looking like. Looks like there's €1 and 1 wiggler. Let's see, there may be some rubellus in here. I'm not sure if there are or are not. When I've been making my mixed bins, I haven't been focusing too much on what goes in here. Like this is €1. You see the banding, the bigger one. You can see the really pretty banding, especially along the tail. Well, along the whole worm, really. Let's take a peek if there's anything else of interest in here. I'm very happy with the quality of these castings. Again, I hope the color is coming through, because if it is, they're black. They're blacker than black. Well, what's blacker than black? They're just very dark black. They're really high quality castings. Oh gosh, I don't want to drop worms on the floor. Oh, there's another cocoon there right near this finger. I'm sure if I spread that out, there's another right there. So there's lots of life, lots of healthy, happy activities going on in here, clearly, from the amount of cocoons that we're seeing. Let me try to find one more handful of worms to show you, and then we'll go ahead and feed them. And you'll see up here by my thumb, here's a cocoon. And just letting you look carefully. I do see some mites running through. I'm not surprised, because their last 3 feedings were mangoes, and mangoes attract potworms and mites. As long as they're not out of control and in massive numbers, they assist the bin, not hurt it. The only thing I just saw was the sticker from the mango, but I don't know where it went now. That's okay. It'll come out. Now here's some. Oh, I thought I found a worm ball, but I guess it was just a collection. I wouldn't call this a worm ball, but these guys are hanging out down where that mango pit is. If the lights go off suddenly, it's because I'm in the middle of a wicked thunderstorm here right now. I'm in my basement, so you can't hear the thunder, but there's another cocoon right down near my finger there, and there's one to the very right. Should be right in the center of the camera now. Oh no, that's not a cocoon. That was the butt of a worm. Okay, well that sure goes to show you my eyesight. And see, I'm finding a little bit of unfinished material down here in the bottom. So here's another cocoon right here. So there is still some unfinished material, but I think by the time they all migrate down to the food and have eaten their last feeding, they'll have finished that. I'm feeling a lot of worms down here. Oh, here's a nice collection. Let me hold my hand under this so they don't fall on the floor. Very healthy looking. Let me try to get to what's in the middle of this, if anything. No, I think it's just like the moisture, the nectar, whatever you would call it, from the mango that had, got eaten in that spot is still filling the soil, or the castings rather, with its flavor. And probably the juice of it is still beneficial to the worms, or at least to the microbes that the worms eat. As much as they eat the food, they eat the microbes that eat the food. So it's a win-win. Even if you have the juice of a fruit, that'll attract so many microbes that the worms love. I like to do these close-up for you guys when I can, when the worms are cooperating and the lighting is adequate, just to show you. I mean, I know you've all seen it before, but there may be some newcomers to the channel that haven't seen it before, so it's always worth doing, in my opinion. This is a nice euro right there. And you see down here, that's a chocolate worm. That's what I call them. You can see that chocolate worm has a cocoon on its back. That looks like a very freshly deposited cocoon. There's also one right in the crook of my thumb over there. Oh, there's another one. Right. There's two together now at the bottom. So lots of good stuff. Okay, so let me just continue to mix up the stuff. I'm not going to do a fluff, go crazy fluff, because since most of them are down here enjoying this mango pit, I want to keep as many as I can down here. So I'm just going to kind of loosen it in place rather than mix the contents every which way. I don't want to take the worms that are already down the end I want them to migrate to and flip them down the other end and have to start the journey over. Not that it's a very long journey, but I want to get these castings harvested. And I am really, really happy with the quality of these castings. I'm not sure. Sometimes, or at least in my experience, you can leave me a comment below on what you have found in yours. Sometimes I can feed worms exactly. I'm sorry, I interrupted myself, but here's a very, very dark worm. I love those. What I was saying is sometimes I'll take 2 bins with the same bedding and the same feedings, and yet the color of the castings is different in the end. And I mean, I could try to hyperanalyze it and see what might have been slightly different, but I don't know that there's an answer that's worth doing that research for. Sometimes the castings are lighter, sometimes they're darker. Now I know that food influences it greatly. A cardboard only bin is going to be much lighter in the casting color than, a bin that has, say, a lot of leaves in it and whatnot, but I've had a few bins that have been identical in bedding and food and worm type, and the casting color has still varied. Now, I think if it was sent to the lab, it would be the same. The results would be the same because, it's what they're eating and what they're pooping that makes the casting. Now, you can see in the back here, this bucket of slop is a bucket of slop. It was some rotten sweet potatoes. The green is some weeds from my yard, and some butternut squash that turned into a science project, and I threw it in my blender. I don't normally do that, but there was so much of it, and I have so many bins to feed today. I'm only going to demo this one, but I'll put it right up here on this mango pit. I'm going to put a good amount because this is going to be the final feeding that's going to attract all the worms down, and since this has gone through my blender, it's going to go quickly. So I need it to last long enough for all the worms to get down there. And I'm going to add some of the grit, which is a combination of oyster shell flour and, oh great, why don't you shake it from the end that it's open? I'm shaking out of here. That's not going to work very well. Let's try this. Oyster shell flour and eggshells. Now, I'm not a big grit person. I give it, but I don't give a ton because they don't need a ton. However, whenever it's their final feeding, I add more than I normally do because that's going to be their final food and their final poop. And the castings will have a high concentrate of calcium if they have a lot of grit, calcium-based grit near the end of the cycle. And it may be true that if you feed them a lot of grit throughout the entire bin process, that the calcium level is higher. When I get to the point where I can afford to do some testing, I think I'll do an experiment with that. I'll run 2 bins from start to finish. I'll do a no grit bin and a high grit bin. And this worm was looking a little weird, but he's okay. And then send the material off to the lab to see what the calcium difference is. So I'm just looking. There's so many cocoons all over the top here, and I know it's probably hard for you to see, but this bin did really, really well, and it's not as finished as I thought, and tomorrow it'll be 6 weeks. I would have expected it to be a little further along. There is a little more unfinished cardboard than I anticipated, so probably by the time they migrate and finish up all this cardboard, it's going to be 7 weeks, and that's okay. I mean, 7 weeks, 6 weeks, the 1 week isn't going to affect anything, so castings are the castings. They're going to go in the garden. The garden season is just beginning here. As a matter of fact, other than some herbs, I have not planted my garden yet. So, and some snow peas and some kale, broccoli, the cold crops. But last week, we were down to 41 degrees here. So, the things like eggplants and peppers and tomatoes wouldn't have liked that. They wouldn't have died, but they don't grow when the temperatures are that cold and the soil's that cold. So if they just sit there stagnant, it makes them more susceptible to disease. So I'd rather wait for the hot weather. Things will catch up. If you start them early or you start them late, they will always catch up to one another. So there's no real benefit of starting things early unless it is a cold crop. All right, folks, well, that's it. I just wanted to show you the status of this bin and that the migration has begun, and I will do an update in a few days, probably 3 or 4 days. They'll be 90% down there, and we'll check in on them and see if we can't harvest the castings. Have a great day.